Note the disclaimer. A brief message before we begin. This video is not for the faint of heart or those of a nervous disposition. Heavy topics will be discussed.
Over 3 minutes of opening credits!
And you spent 8 seconds complaining! So in addition to the credits sin, you'll also be getting the yelling at the screen cliché total.
Look, you either put out that waffle iron with the ready-made batter that 1 out of 5 people don't know how to operate, or you just don't put waffles on a serving tray where they can get cold.
Pointing out waffles on the screen cliché.
Hey, Sam. When I say would you mind putting breakfast together for the retreat, I meant like some stale donuts, some coffee.
When Peter said this, I stopped the movie. I drove around all the local haunts and got into deep conversations with common people like you and me. I talked to my city councilman. I got 15 minutes with the mayor. And they all agreed nothing that Peter described there sounds like breakfast.
Was all that really necessary? You could have just sinned Peter for being a stingy prick and no one would have argued against you. But since you ran your mouth, I have to ding the dinger.
Molly is playing I Will Buy You a New Life on her car radio, but the sin is having to take 30 seconds of my life to figure out if the song I'm listening to is by Everclear or Everlast.
I'd say that's a you problem, bud.
They call this company Presage, which is a word that means a sign that something bad is going to happen. It works for the movie because that's what these movies are, but calling your company this is like calling it Failure Inc.
Congratulations. You just worked out that because of the company name, something bad will happen. Agreed that a real company wouldn't do this, but luckily this isn't a real company. Right, Jer?
You're not looking so hot there, Mallface.
On the night the people who founded this company turned in the paperwork for their business license, they must have gone into the woods naked and burned a human resources handbook in a pentagram.
Well, yes. There's a cheating pig of a man, an intern sleeping with her boss, and someone who, as James A. Janice puts it, lives for casual Fridays, and suddenly that means we have to burn a human resources manual. All well and good, but really, no one cares since these guys are going to die anyway. Also, the naked comment was really unnecessary.
Hey, Stan, how's it going? Hey, it's Sam, sir.
Asshole boss character doesn't know people's names cliché.
Otherwise known as Jeremy Scott from CinemaSins.
I fire him and suddenly I've got a factory full of Roys.
Like Charlie in the chocolate factory? I heard there were lots of Roys in that factory too.
He means more people like Roy. As in, they'd all have zero respect for the manager, and very little will get done because they're arguing with Nathan. Not an entire factory full of literal Roys. And I would appreciate it if you left Charlie and the chocolate factory out of this.
Well, look, if you do go to Paris, do me a favor.
What's that?
Take Roy with you.
That's a joke. I tell jokes sometimes. That's a little moose-boosh for the restaurant guy.
Well, that joke fell flat.
Dead. Flat.
Get ready for a new adventure at 180 Corporate Consulting.
This is the requisite reference to 180 that this franchise has established as its death number. But if 180 is such a death knell, how many people have died after watching this video?
It's only a big thing for us viewers because we have all the insider knowledge. This movie's characters, however, don't have that knowledge, since this is actually a prequel to the first movie, meaning that they have no clue on the Flight 180 curse until Sam and Molly get caught up in the disaster themselves.
No one will be seated during the Remember Final Destination 2 scene.
Yeah, that joke wasn't funny when you did that for Alex Browning in the first movie.
No one will be seated as Alex opens up a metal can of pudding and eats it. This movie is set in New York, so why is this construction sign not using the American system of measurement instead of the very Canadian system of measurement on this sign? Also Canada. Also the metric system.
Ah, so this is the second movie I've covered so far with you sending Canadians. Well, to put your mind at ease, the filming of basically every film, except for Final Destination 4, took place in Vancouver. FD4's took place primarily in New Orleans. Also seen in Canada. Leave our Commonwealth brothers alone. And I'm not even going to comment on the last one since he just did that for the hell of it, so let's just move on.
Ow. Damn it.
Tetanus.
Alright, I'll give you that one. As someone who ended up with a nail in his foot and had to receive a tetanus booster, I can relate to this. However, it would have been more accurate if you pointed this out during the gymnastics routine when a character named Porter ends up landing on an upright nail going into her foot. But, thankfully, you've still earned yourself a sin off.
The radio suddenly turns on and starts playing Dust in the Wind.
No, that's all I need to know from you. Sinning Dust in the Wind.
Now that the mast of a ship has entered Candace, someone needs to plan where they will inter the intern.
I don't think that's how it works, Jeremy. And besides, this is the entire sales team, plus their boss and manager for the factory workers, meaning no one would have survived this if it wasn't a premonition. And besides, Peter wouldn't be that callous, since she's his girlfriend and he'd be in deep mourning, like we see later.
Not having the one character who's the gymnast be one of the characters that has to balance on the beam.
Your point being?
Hitting water from that distance wouldn't be too far off from the feeling of hitting concrete.
If she fell horizontally, I would agree with you, but this was more of a feet-first high dive. And while yes, it would be dangerous from 61 meters or 200 feet high up, like the Lionsgate Bridge actually is, it is still survivable if you know what you're doing. And while it may come off as sheer dumb luck here, let me remind you that this is a movie where death comes to collect people who are supposed to be dead and comes up with massive Rube Goldberg contraptions to make their deaths look like horrific accidents. This isn't our reality.
Miles Fisher played Tom Cruise in one movie and suddenly he thinks he is Tom Cruise.
Again, your point being?
And now more of the people we were introduced to already, and only the people we were introduced to already, are getting off the bus for reasons.
Peter's trying to get Sam back on the bus so that they can have a discussion about what's bothering him. Candace went out to assist Peter, Olivia, Isaac and Nathan all got off to see what was going on, and Dennis was getting set to chew them all out for running away and potentially ruining the retreat. Are all the examples I gave reason enough for you, Jeremy? Though I do agree with your later reasoning of couldn't they have just killed Isaac immediately and be done with it, merely because he sucks. He's not as bad as Frankie Cheeks, but he's just as much of a horror.
Something that took 5 minutes to happen in the vision happens in 2 minutes flat this time. So in the actual incident, the bus falls backwards after the bridge collapses, and in Sam's premonition, the bus falls forward, which verifies what I've always said. Death would be f***ing terrible at CinemaSins.
Like I keep saying for all of these movies so far, not everything that happens in a premonition is going to be translated to reality. I mean, for the love of God, 6 other passengers were saved by Alex from Flight 180 before it exploded. Kimberly blocked 7 other people, not including Isabella, from going on to Route 23 before the pile-up occurred. 9 other passengers of the Devil's Flight roller coaster got off before the thing derailed thanks to Wendy, and with Nick yelling about a crash, 9 other people managed to escape a racetrack before it happened. Not everything has to be exact!
It says right here in the statement, I saw it collapse. I knew it would happen. That sounds premeditated to me.
Wait, what? What exactly does Agent Block think Sam did to collapse the bridge himself?
I'm just going to stop you right there and say that Block here is looking for an explanation as to how Sam knew it was going to happen.
Chalking up the high winds and structural damage from the road construction.
God damn it, dude. If you could have come in 2 minutes earlier, we could have been saved from the nonsensical questioning.
Okay, I didn't cover the previous ones after the cutoff, but the reason why is because he was just complaining about this line of questioning. And I really don't want to do too many double-dipping sins all in one go.
The survivors were 8 employees of Presage Paper on their way to a business retreat. The other 17 employees were killed.
The reporter said 8 employees survived and 17 were killed, but earlier when Isaac gets up to go to the bathroom, we see there are only 19 passengers on the bus, 20 when you count the bus driver, and not the 25 that the news reporter's math would suggest. Look, lady, I give as little a shit about math as you do, but you're still getting a sin for being terrible at it.
Okay, unlike your pointing out of the Flight 180 inconsistency with the Man Abraham students and teachers, this could be a little bit simpler, as once we see Isaac getting up and going past Dennis, we only see the 19, but the other 6 could have been in front of him, obscured by the camera angles.
The lack of any rhyme or reason to how these names are ordered on this plaque is f***ing maddening.
Pointing out things on the screen.
I find it weird that the memorial service takes place at a cemetery.
Sinning realism.
I see dead people.
Haha, that's a joke. I tell jokes sometimes. That's a little what they call gallows humor in my neck of the woods. Ha! Get it? Gallows? Nick?
You'd think a channel that tries to be funny wouldn't get so butthurt about someone else telling jokes. Also double dipping.
Death doesn't like to be cheated. You all just be careful now.
I guess this is Tony Todd's role in these movies.
No! Sinning Tony Todd!
It's flat. No flavor.
That customer is an asshole.
Boy, I sure am glad that the bridge incident didn't affect Sam's cooking.
Like you even care about this plotline. You barely even pay attention to the main story in any movie.
You haven't done anything wrong.
Then what? What is it?
Paris.
I admit this is entirely subjective on my part and super argumentative.
D'accord? Alors passe ton tour. otherwise known as Skip.
Also, this fucker has a brother, and I'm sure he'd love to talk to him about surviving that bridge thing, but I guess he's too busy planning the wedding to make an appearance in this movie.
Maybe he did, but it isn't important to the plot of the movie. And besides, if they added that in, you'd sin it for padding the runtime.
Once a Final Destination movie enters its kill the survivors stage, it always becomes an over-the-top observation on lax security standards. You will wonder how anything functions in this world when you see how criminally bad the conditions are in this gym.
Death is playing the long game here, meaning he's making them unobservant, since he wants to make it all look like an accident. And like I keep saying for all of these movies, this isn't our reality.
Is Death toying with Candace or just the audience right now? I guess this is a conundrum one could ask with any of these death sequences, but this bullshit here is way more annoying than it is most of the time.
This is to build up suspense, Jeremy. And I will say, I'm glad you're not making another mention of Quentin Tarantino during this gymnastics session, but the consistency is off again.
This death is not only gross, but hilarious.
Schadenfreude? Gott im Himmel.
Yeah, that's a bummer about Candace. Guess we all should have seen that coming.
Saying this with an earshot of the deceased's partner. Don't make me hate you as well, Olivia. I've already used up a lot of my hate allotment with Isaac, but I might be able to squeeze in a little more room.
Well, she and Candace were essentially rivals as established in the beginning, and the movie isn't trying to make you hate Olivia. It sounds more like a you problem.
Who's my girl, Kimber? Amber, yes, that's what I said.
This guy is so terrible with women that I'm beginning to believe that his calls are an act to make people believe the opposite, right down to faking the fact that he can't keep the name straight. Every interaction we've seen with actual women in this movie, including with the receptionist at the spa, go poorly. So I don't understand why the movie seems to think he's a successful Lothario unless there's something it isn't telling us.
Knowing you, Mr. Scott, you don't deserve to know the answer. Not to mention it isn't important to the movie.
Yeah, you have a lovely little canter.
Just want to point out that this character got to outlive Candace, and I don't like it.
Stating that you're pointing it out doesn't make you impervious to the rules of this court. Not to mention, this isn't the first time it's happened, but I'm really sick of bringing up that utter bellend from Final Destination 3, so I'll just leave it as a Jeremy points things out on the screen cliche sin and leave it there.
I would have removed all the sins if she'd simply broke his neck here, and that was the death.
I would agree with you here, but like I said before, death doesn't work through a person, with the only exception here being someone on the list killing someone who isn't on the list to take their lifespan. So I'll neither add or remove a sin for this one.
To, finding new jobs. Because it's only a matter of time before they shut us down.
What? Why would a corporation shut down a branch just because they had a huge bus accident? Wouldn't they be replacing people as soon as possible?
Technically yelling at the screens, so 5 sins. Oh, and 1 more because the entire plant wasn't going to be shut down, just the sales and administration team.
She dies doing something that she's done almost every day for the last 15 years of her life.
I mean, I guess that sounds weird until you think about it for 2 seconds and realize that cigarette smokers, alcoholics, race car drivers, and crocodile hunters could all say the same thing.
I beg your f***ing pardon, mate?
Let's do this. 2 billion people can't be Wong.
Isaac didn't die before delivering this pun. I'm also going to sin it for him not dying immediately after.
I was right with you, right until you brought up Isaac not dying after delivering the pun. And you made the same mistake about Julie in Final Destination 3.
And what are you going to do about it, Miss Cutest Couple? Raw.
Julie laughs at this instead of dying of embarrassment. Death took a holiday when she made this so-called quit.
First off, Death's plan was to take out the Devil's Flight roller coaster riders. Secondly, how is Julie supposed to die of embarrassment here when she's taunting Wendy? That doesn't really make any sense. Only this time, it was closer to his actual death, so as much as I'd like to give you a pass, the statutes won't allow it. So I've technically got to give you a double dipping sin.
Okay, once again, Chinese lady, I don't have a clue what you're saying.
30 minutes.
We've already covered that she understands English and can speak English, so why was she still talking Chinese to him about the one thing she actually needed him to understand and do?
For the same reason you mentioned, Poppy decides to behave like a literal troll to poor Branch. For the masseuse to troll Isaac.
Fire!
I don't understand why Isaac can't just get up and run out of the room when he sees this fire. It's not like the acupuncture needles are keeping him fastened to the table.
Okay, admittedly I've never gone through an acupuncture appointment, but it's clear Jeremy never has either. Because you shouldn't be moving around with needles in your body like that, otherwise the needles will dislodge or break, they could cause discomfort and pain, or the needles could go even deeper into the muscle, like we see later.
And lucky for Death, no one was near Isaac's room that could hear his screams and help him. Did Death somehow make that happen too?
Well, if you were paying attention, you'd see him knocking on the walls on the way to his massage and said,
Tend to be a bit noisy, if you know what I mean.
And the therapist left him alone for what was supposed to be 30 minutes until the fire started.
You're at the cemetery, then the gym, now here? What are you doing?
My job.
So how does your creepy appearance at the cemetery qualify as you doing your job?
Because he's the coroner. And as we find out later on in the next movie, he was a survivor in a similar style disaster, so he knows the most about death. Before meeting Sam, then Alex, then finally Kimberly, of course.
You saved her? Why? Because you decided that she deserved to live more than the rest of us?
Sam just told Peter he saved Molly in a vision, and now Peter is pissed because of that? Talk about some manufactured bullshit tension.
In what way is this bullshit? Peter was depressed about losing Candace, so much so that he's now lashing out in anger over the slightest comment. And now hearing that Sam rescued Molly in a vision, after being told that if you take someone else's life, you get their remaining years, basically pushed him over the edge enough and made him more unstable to the point that he now feels resentment towards Sam and wants to get rid of Molly because he felt she doesn't deserve to have lived over Candace. Which I've always found a bit odd, because it wasn't her fault that Candace is dead. And I would have thought he'd like to have taken a leaf out of Carter Horton's book and try to off himself so he would be with her, but still, the sin is on you, Jeremy.
My assistant's giving me an incomplete file. I'll be right back.
It's customary when a patient has a laser directed at their eyes to leave them alone in the room.
Okay, Jeremy, you win. I'll take a sin off because you actually pointed out something wrong.
If it would be harmful or deadly for the laser strength to exceed this level, then why create a machine where that's even possible?
And yet you didn't point this out during the tanning bed sequence in the third movie. How odd.
She might be in danger.
Olivia's doing all of that screaming in the other room, and apparently these people can't hear it.
Now, you want to try that again, Jeremy?
And then, by magic, everyone can hear screaming, even though that's exactly what she's been doing for the last minute.
Oh, never mind. You brought that up too. I'm still gonna sin you for it.
We think we weren't supposed to survive on that bridge.
You know, maybe it wouldn't help, but I'm kind of surprised that Sam and Molly don't tell Agent Block to go talk to Bloodworth, who genuinely seems to know the machinations of Final Destination. Sure, he's not immensely helpful, but I feel like Block would stop being so stupid.
FBI agents haven't had to deal with this before FD5 and FD1. Also calling Block stupid.
First it was Candace.
Then Isaac. Then Olivia. They're dying in order.
This is the part where the characters realize that death is going after them in the order they died in the vision.
No, not continuing this one. This is just a pointing things out on the screen cliche sin. Done and dusted.
You cut my hours, which means you cut my pay. Corporate has us operating less than 50% until this whole thing blows over.
How the f*** does the union rep Roy not know about the corporate decision to cut everyone's hours? Do you think corporate makes a decision to cut hours without telling the union rep? How is this even an argument?
Maybe because Roy was looking for a scapegoat? And he hates Nathan already since he was younger than Roy and was already made assistant plant manager? And he doesn't care about the bridge fiasco and the loss of nearly all the sales department as opposed to his own pay?
They're shutting down the plant.
Not the plant. Just us. Just sales and administration.
How does that even work? Don't you need some sort of administration to be in charge of the plant?
Corporate would need to take it over until they found new people. And since you brought it up, I won't repeat it here. And this was the answer to the question that you had during Sin 64.
You saw it coming, and then you took his life. You put him in the way.
Yes. I think I did.
Opening confessing to sort of murder.
Normally, that would be a sin. However, Nathan didn't intend for this to happen. Peter was badgering him about it, and it meant Nathan could stay off the list for a while.
Then who would be next?
How Sam and Molly don't already know the order of every single death right now after they figured out that people are dying in order just boggles the mind.
That's kind of why I said Sam was not as useful during my Final Destination rebuttals, despite almost everyone hating on poor Nick just for being bland. Nick actually did things to prevent people's deaths. Sam either didn't do it on time, barely at all, or only focused his attention on Molly. Meanwhile, when you bring the future visionaries into the equation, Alex saved Carter and Clear and traded off their turns when it was just the two of them left. Kimberly tried to warn Tim before he became a glossy human pancake, and took Burke off the list by sacrificing herself and getting revived, Wendy tried to warn basically everyone while rescuing or aiding in the rescue of Ian, Julie and Kevin, with those two near-deaths happening at the tricentennial, and in Nick's case, saving both Laurie and Janet from the cinema explosion a day after Janet was rescued from a car wash disaster, and even warned the mechanic and tried to warn and rescue Hunt and the cowboy. Now, I will give Sam credit here, as he does try to rescue Olivia, even though it was too late, and made sure Nathan was okay after Roy got hooked, but before and after those incidents didn't seem to bother, as he kept trying to win back Molly or persuade her to come with him to Paris, and even killed Peter to A, keep her safe, and B, extend his lifespan, which Peter initially took from Agent Block. Long and the short of it, Sam had at least a handle or idea of the order, but didn't know who would be next until him at the end, and when their times came, didn't do much to prevent it.
You're not seriously going to work, are you?
Molly, Isaac died on a massage table.
Besides, I've already gone over my vision and I remember that Peter is next, right? Right?
Jeremy manipulates dialogue cliché.
All the instruments of death Sam sees in this kitchen are rendered pointless by the fact that Peter is next.
While that may be the case, he's worrying about what might be on the menu for him if Peter bit the dust before we come to the final showdown. He's assessing the risks before he's mincemeat.
Sam takes overcandling to new heights during this romantic gesture to his girlfriend.
I'll lighten up, Jeremy.
I'm next to go, right? It's me and then you, isn't it?
How is this still a question at this point? The fact that they aren't hyper-aware of the order right now.
Skip!
None of us deserve to die, then, why is it that you deserve to live, Molly?
Peter went through a whole logic pretzel where he decided not to kill some random person because they didn't deserve to die, and has now focused his efforts on why someone deserves to live. And while trying to reason with a crazy person is a fool's errand, I do wonder why he didn't move the goalposts when it came to the random woman he didn't push into traffic.
Because he's upset at Sam for saving Molly in the Premonition as opposed to the rest of the group. And after losing Candace, hearing he was marked for death and watching his boss die in front of him, he wasn't thinking straight. And since he couldn't bring himself to kill a stranger, he reserved his efforts for Molly, who admitted outside the spa that she didn't deserve to live. Why Sam thought she was the only one worth rescuing is beyond me, but still! And why is it I always have to bring up that characters who are under duress can't make logical or sound decisions?
Repeat, shots fired.
Oh, of course Agent Block just happens to be in the neighborhood right now.
And let me just stop you right there. You know what the answer is, but it wasn't last night. It was just before making the attempt on Molly's life, and would have happened a block or two away from Block.
Peter is turning all this shit on to presumably make it easier for Death to kill Sam once he has killed Molly, but since Peter is next on Death's list, doesn't this just make it easier for Peter to get killed before he can murder Molly?
No, he's looking to cover his tracks because he doesn't want to spend his additional lifespan in prison, something he tells Molly after Block buys the farm. His idea is to get additional life and have there be no witnesses. This goes haywire, however, when Block comes in, Molly witnesses the murder, and Sam regains consciousness.
They drag Courtney B. Vance into this nonsense for this. For this?
Well, it's this, or cast him in a movie 14 years later where he tries to track down and catch a blue dog-like alien, and only make him that instead of the Palaki's social worker.
It's gone. You killed him.
So does that mean I get Block's life?
Being this excited this soon after witnessing someone who seemed like a totally decent person just tried to do their job even when he was doing it poorly get murdered.
I smell a scene manipulation. First, Peter was the one that shot Agent Block, and Sam killed Peter, so Molly and Sam were saying that because Peter's dead now, Block's remaining lifespan goes to Sam. Secondly, the excitement is that Sam was seemingly off the list after killing Peter, and now he, Molly, and to a lesser extent Nathan, can go on to live their normal lives without fear until the climactic rug pull occurs. Also sinning Courtney B. Vance. I'm not that familiar with his work, but I am still going to give you 5 sins for that.
We're about to tie this all into the first Final Destination, which is awesome. However,
no. However, and that was it for me. 20 more sins.
Come on, look, despite any flaws we found leading up to this moment, this is still a hell of a twist. Maybe one of the best. Definitely should be talked about more. Let's remove a sin before I'm reminded how gross Isaac was as a character.
Aw, who's a good boy? I will add one back, however, since you brought up the breathing room time again. It's to toy with the remaining survivors and give them false hope.
Nice you to come, Nathan.
You mean the union guys celebrating Roy invited Nathan to the shit? Wouldn't most of them think Nathan killed Roy?
If you said factory workers instead of union guys, you wouldn't be getting a sin for this. But my guess is, after hearing Nathan ask Roy if he was okay, and with some of them seeing the scuffle that occurred earlier, word would be that this was just an accident. Besides, John, the factory worker talking to Nathan, mentions later that Roy's time was nearly up anyway because he had an undiagnosed brain aneurysm before he became an under 6 foot long pile of fish bait.
Turns out Roy had an enlarged blood vessel in his brain so big, it was about to burst.
So if you're feeling any guilt about killing the guy, this totally absolves you.
Jeremy manipulates dialogue cliché, and this explained why John said it was nice of Nathan to come despite the circumstances.
We will now get a long compilation of all the craziest deaths in the franchise, because the creators clearly think that is all the audience comes for to these movies, and is completely leaving out the section of the fan base that comes for all the sweet, tender moments. Yeah, I can't finish that thought process with a straight face. We're all sick deep down inside, 100 sins.
That's a hell of a way to close out the video. By padding the sin count. And with all that, court is adjourned. Be sure to leave any more suggestions for CinemaSins sins down below, and I will see you in the next video.